stock turnover ratio tells you in a year of 365 days or 12 months how many times the stock has been sold. It tells you the frequency of sale, but we don't know in how many days or how many weeks or how many days does it takes to conversion, that is stock into sale. So if you want to know that, you have to find out stock velocity. For example, in a year, just we assume 12 months. In 12 months, your stock turnover ratio is 12 times. 1 month. So it takes 1 month for conversion of stock to sale. If you send the product to warehouse, it was lying in the warehouse for a period of 1 month before converted into sale. In other words, you are maintaining 1 month stock. You are maintaining 1 month stock or 1 month equivalent stock of sale. So every month you are selling products and services. 1 month sales, the stock equivalent to 1 month sale has been maintained in the warehouse. Now, is it correct or not? Then we have to verify. In the same industry, people are maintaining stock equivalent to 2 months, but you are maintaining stock equivalent to 1 month. You have less inventory compared to competitors. It is saying that your product is moving very fast. In the industry, they have 15 days lead for production and sale, but you have 1 month. So they are carrying 15 days stock equivalent to 15 days sale. You are carrying stock equivalent to 1 month sale. It means you are carrying excess investment in stock. So fast moving or slow moving can be determined by comparing our stock with industry standard. If our stock turnover ratio is better than the industry standard, our product is moving very fast. Otherwise, our product is moving very slow compared to industry. So the main reason why we don't have perfect stock turnover ratio, that is mainly because of excess investment made in the stock. If you have more and more inventory, stock turnover ratio will come down. So if stock accumulating means nobody is ready to buy, that's why the producer stock has been lying in the warehouse. Hence, to know the movement of stock, first we have to compute stock turnover ratio and stock velocity. These should be compared with the industry standard to know whether it is a fast moving one or slow moving one. Debtors turnover ratio. In a year of 365 days, you made credit sales of 365 days. In other words, your daily credit sale online. Your daily credit sale is equal to 1 lakh. Now, so you are allowed 30 days credit to your customers. First day 1 of your business, 1 day sale was completed. Since it's the credit sale, you have an entry like this. debtors account data to sales account. 1 lakh. Second day sale, 2 lakhs. Third day sale, after completion of third day sale, 3 lakhs. After completion of fourth day sale, 4 lakhs. After completion of 30th day sale, 30 lakhs. So first 30 days sales are completed. In your ledger, debtors balance is showing 30 lakhs. 31st day, again 1 lakh sale. Let us assume there is no delay in payments and bad debts. The first day sale will be collected after 30 days. So on 31st day, you will receive the first payment. So you pass an entry that bank account data to debtors account. See, one credit, one debit, both are cancelled out. In 31st day, 32nd day again you have 1 lakh sale, 1 lakh collection. Like that, in 365 days, whenever you verified the debtors ledger, 30 lakhs has been continuously shown. Why it is? Because the first 30 days itself, first 30 days sales itself is the amount blocked with customers. You don't get that amount until you close your business. You can collect that amount in the event of liquidation. Until that, these 30 lakhs will be blocked with customers. That's why it is called as investment in debtors. We have to invest some money to allow credit to our customers. So credit sales 365 lakhs. $30 lakhs, 12.17 times. So debtors turnover ratio reveals that you made 12 credit sales. You made credit sales at 12.57 times. In other words, in a year we sold goods and credit to customers on an average 12.17 times. So this ratio tells you frequency of credit sales. That is how many days goods have been sold to customer. Now you have 12.17 times. This is meaningless. So, okay, in a year we sold goods on 12 on a frequency of 12.57. How many times the product have been sold to customers? Or how many days or how many weeks or how many months does the customer takes to make payment? See, in 365 days, $12.17 times credit has been allowed. It says your credit period is equal to 30 days. So for the first 30 days credit sales, you would have a collection in the next 30 days. Similarly, this period, again, you find some credit sales. This will be collected in the next 30 days. Like that, sale, collection, sale, collection. You can see once sale is, collection will be subsequent to the month of sale. If you sold goods today or this month, the collection may not be in this month, that would be in next month. That's why sale, collection, sale, collection. So first sale is happened, then collection is happened. That's why you always have some amount blocked with the customers. If you want to know lag between your sale and collection, then you have to look at the debtors velocity. So the debtors velocity is saying that the lag is 30 days. For sale and collection, there is a lag of 30 days. In other words, 30 days credit has been allowed to customers. See, higher the debtors collection turnover ratio, lower will be the debtors velocity. Lower the debtors turnover ratio, higher will be the collection period. Suppose your debtors turnover ratio is 25 times. This ratio reveals that you sold goods 25 times on credit basis. The frequency of credit sales is equal to 25 times. In how many days the sale has been happened? It is saying that for every 18.25 days, you are selling goods on credit basis. In a year, you sold 25 times. In other words, if there is no delay in payment, if there is no bad debts, then we can interpret this statement in another way. We got 25 payments from the customers in a year with respect to credit sales, or we got payment for every 18.25 days. 18.25 days. For that means for collecting each payment we require 18.25 days. So we can interpret it as credit sale and credit sale frequency, or it can be interpreted as number of payments collected, frequency of each payment. So first we have to compute these two ratios. Then my credit sales frequency 12 times, credit period 30 days. So these two are compared with industry standard. Industry standard 10 times. Similar firms in the industries have made credit sales at a frequency of 10 times. They sold goods on credit basis for 10 times. You sold goods on credit basis for 12 times. You have upper hand. Similarly, they are getting payment after 36.5 days. You are getting payment after 30 days of sale. So after comparison of these two terms, we can conclude that our credit policy is much better than industry. In other words, we have less investment in debtors when compared to other firms in the industry. Similarly, see, if debtors turnover ratio increases, frequency of credit sales increases, debtors velocity decreases. If you have debtor in your books, our money, business money, or your money, your business money will be blocked with customers. So, how should we recover that amount? That is the alternative way. Creditors, let us assume your average credit purchases in a year was 365 lakhs. Number of days in a year 365. It tells you your daily purchase was 1 lakh. So you got 50 days credit from your supplier. First day you bought material on credit basis. How would you write the entry? Credit purchase account data to creditors account. In creditors account by purchase 1 lakh. So first 50 days, day 1 1 lakh, day 2 1 lakh, day 3 1 lakh. After 50 days, the balance would be 50 lakhs. On 51st day, again you will purchase goods worth 1 lakh. With respect to first day purchase, you will make payment. So both the payment and collection, payment and purchase have been cancelled. In the 52nd day, again you have 1 lakh. Both these are cancelled. So you can find in 365 days, if you verify your creditors account, the balance amount would be 50 lakhs. You don't pay this amount if this payment will continue. So in the previous case, you are worrying that my payment was blocked with the customer. Now someone payment was blocked with you. So no worry about this. You have to balance these two elements. For better financial management, the credit allowed and credit taken has to be determined by taking investment in the both the cases. Suppose 50 lakhs worth of goods were sold on credit basis. Your 50 lakhs will be blocked with customers. If you had 50 lakhs worth of stock with customers, the equivalent amount should be purchased on credit from suppliers, so that the amount blocked with the customers would be the amount payable to creditors. Then there is no cash crunch. You don't need to worry about the payment. So once you collected the payment, you will make it. So like that, we have total 6 ratios. Inventory turnover ratio tells you the frequency of credit sales. Inventory velocity tells you that frequency. It just expresses that frequency in days, weeks or months. Debtors turnover ratio tells you the frequency of credit sales. So if you want to know that frequency in days, weeks or months, you have to look at the debtors velocity. Creditors velocity tells you in how many days the frequency of credit purchase during the year. So if you want to know the credit period allowed by the supplier, you have to look at the creditors velocity. 7th one, assets turnover ratio. So this is equal to sales divided by total assets. Asset turnover ratio tells you how much revenue we are getting for each rupee invested in the total assets. Higher the asset turnover ratio, higher will be the productivity or utilization of the assets, and vice versa. Suppose you got 400 lakhs revenue out of 100 lakhs. Your asset turnover ratio expressed in times, 4 times. So this means for every rupee invested in your assets, you got 4 rupees of revenue. So once you have computed this asset turnover ratio, it should be compared with other firms. Suppose X Limited had X Limited is similar company in the industry, identical to that of existing company, say had asset turnover ratio of 10 times. But you have asset turnover ratio of 4 times. Your asset turnover ratio is much less than the industry standard. So, why it is? What is the reasons? Might be. The decrease in the asset turnover ratio is mainly because of excess or unnecessary investment in total assets. So excess investment or unnecessary investment is the one of the reasons for low asset turnover ratio. If you want to improve that, you have to verify in which asset you made excess investment. So once verified, that should be reduced. So that excess, once you withdraw the excess investment, if it is diverted to a proper asset, you would increase your revenue and you would increase your productivity of assets. So first we have to find out the asset turnover ratio. If you find any problem, then you have to address that issue. Where there is investment loss. So for this purpose, to know where the amount has been invested, in assets, we can find two more. First part fixed assets, second part working capital. Total assets consisting of investment in fixed assets, investment in working assets. If you find fixed assets turnover ratio, sales by fixed assets, if it is at par with the industry standard, then there is no utilization, underutilization or overutilization of fixed assets. Then the problem might be in your current assets. To know that, we compute working capital turnover ratio, sales divided by working capital. If it is much low, then we can have a conclusion that we don't have enough working capital turnover. We have excess investment in working capital. Like that, working capital turnover ratio is verified. Finally, profitability ratios. Profitability ratios. These are GPR, gross profit to sales ratio. Second one, NPR, net profit to sales ratio. OPR, operating profit ratio. Operating profit sales into 100. Based on sales. So based on sales, so profitability ratios are classified into three categories: gross profit, net profit and operating profit. Based on investment, return on capital employed, EBIT by capital employed, return on net worth, profit after tax by net worth, return on equity, earnings available to equity shareholders divided by So there are 6 ratios. First, GPR, gross profit ratio. So GPR ratio tells you the relationship between our gross profit and sales. You know that sales minus direct cost is equal to gross profit. So higher the gross profit, higher will be the operating efficiency, and vice versa. Every business looks to increase its gross profit margin. So if you have high gross profit margin, you are running business in a much efficient way compared to other firms in the industry. So from this gross profit, we use it to recover our fixed cost or operating expenses like salaries, rents, insurance, etc. These expenses are met from gross profit. So net profit. Gross profit minus operating expenses is equal to net profit. Gross profit minus operating expenses is equal to net profit. Sometimes you may have non-cash expenses like depreciation, provision for bad debts, goodwill written off. Those expenses have to be deducted. Similarly, loss on sale of fixed assets or investments has to be deducted. Any profit on sale of investments or fixed assets has to be added. After making these adjustments, net profit will be arrived. Now, what is the difference between net profit and operating profit? Profit and operating profit. Only difference is net profit is also known as overall profit. It takes profit from the business, profit from the other businesses. An expenditure which is connected to the business, not connected to the business. If it is related to an entity, it should be recorded here. See, gross profit earned from business activities, operating expenses are related to business activities. So some of the non-cash expenses are related to business activity, whereas loss on sale of assets, profit on sale of assets are not related to business activity because they are non-operating. Non-operating incomes and non-operating expenses does not form part of business activity, but net profit ratio reveals that it is a part of business, but it is not correct. Example, you have 500 lakhs net profit from a revenue of 1500 lakhs. That case, your NPR, net profit margin, is equal to 33.33%. So when you compare this 33.33% with the other firms have net profit ratio of 20%. So after comparison of these two, you have a conclusion that you have better net profit ratio compared to industry standard. Now tell me, your net profit ratio is higher by 13.33%. You are taking this as a strength, but If I go through this income statement, I found three items. Loss on sale of fixed assets 100, profit on sale of fixed assets 500, profit on sale of shares 900 lakhs. So two non-operating incomes, one non-operating expenditure. 1400 minus 100, 1300 lakhs comes from non-core activities. This profit has been included in this net profit. So if you deduct this 13 lakhs from your net profit, your operating profit becomes negative. You don't have any right income from the business activities. So this 20% is exclusively come from business activities. In this 20%, they don't have any non-operating expenses and non-operating incomes. But you have non-operating incomes and non-operating expenses. Majority, almost these incomes are double to your net profit. That's why you have higher net profit ratio compared to other folks. See, profit on sale of investment. Yes, it is a income source, but you may not find it in next year. Our activity is not to purchase or sell investments, or not to purchase or sell fixed assets. So any income accrued thereon or any loss thereon is a one-time activity. We don't consider that gain or loss as a part of your operating efficiency or inefficiency. So if you take profit as a measure for your efficiency, so higher profitability increases your operating efficiency, lower profit will decreases your operating efficiency. So efficiency or inefficiency is subject to what? Your profitability. Your profitability must come from routine activities. So this fact was ignored by net profit. That's why most of the people are not considers net profit of the business, rather they consider operating profit of the business. That's why first we compute net profit ratio to refine that, to know the core profit from the business activity, operating profit margin will be arrived. Operating profit OP is equal to PBIT. This is equal to net profit before tax and interest on debt and non-operating expenses or losses minus non-operating incomes. This is how operating profit is arrived. So profitability ratios based on investment. Return on capital employed. Return on capital employed is equal to EBIT by capital employed. Second one, return on net worth is equal to profit after tax divided by net worth. Return on equity is equal to earnings available to equity shareholders divided by equity. There are three formulas. First to go, return on capital employed. See. A company is having 200 lakhs of equity, 12% preference share capital of 100 lakhs, 10% debentures of 100 lakhs. In fixed assets, 250 lakhs being invested. In working capital, 150 lakhs have been invested. So this is the outlook of the company, balance sheet outlook. Now, EBIT less interest, less EBT, less tax, EAT, plus preference dividend, finally earnings available to equity shareholders. Let us assume company had 100 lakhs of EBIT. Out of 100 lakhs, interest 100 lakhs into 10%. 10 lakhs has to be paid. So balance 90 lakhs. Suppose it is subject to tax of 30%, say 27. So 63 lakhs are available to shareholders. Out of 63 lakhs, 100 lakhs into 12%, 12 lakhs paid to preference shareholders, 63 minus 12, the balance would be 51 lakhs. Now, sales minus total cost is equal to EBIT. EBIT is also known as return available to the finances. See, 400 lakhs have been invested in fixed assets as well as current assets. These assets provides you 100 lakhs return. So asset generate revenue. From the revenue, if you deduct the direct and indirect cost, you would get the profit. So this profit belongs to these assets. These assets have been funded by these finances. That's why this return belongs to these finances. So if you want to know the total return available to the investors or finances, you must compute return on capital employed. So it tells you that you had 100 lakhs profit on investment of 400 lakhs. So it makes it 25%. Similarly, so this 25% earned on all sources. It impliedly saying that you are getting 25% return on equity capital, on preference capital, on debt capital. So out of 25%, only 10% has been paid to lenders. The balance 90 lakhs goes to the shareholders. Out of 90 lakhs, 30% goes to government. Shareholders left with 63 lakhs. You know that the share out of 63 lakhs, first payment has to be made to preference shareholders. That's why 12 lakhs have been deducted. Now, the second part here, return on capital employed, is saying the total return on total invested capital. So this capital includes capital contributed by shareholders, preference shareholders and long-term lenders. If you want to know the return on the shareholders capital or shareholders funds, then you have to look at return on net worth. It is saying that, so you got 63 lakhs profit on a net worth of, what do you mean by capital employed? Capital employed means equity share capital plus reserves and surplus plus preference share capital plus long-term debt. This is put together 400 lakhs. Net worth means shareholders funds, which includes equity share capital plus reserves and surplus plus preference share capital. So you had 200 lakhs in equity investment, 100 lakhs in preference. So put together, your net worth was 300. $63 lakhs divided by 300 lakhs. It comes to 21%. On shareholders' capital, company got 21%. So out of 21%, 12% passed on to the preference shareholders. Then the equity shareholders are left with 51 lakhs profit for an investment of 100 lakhs. They got 25.5%. So these are fundamental investment ratios that must be computed by the every analyst before suggesting an investor to go for investment or not. So these are required for prospective investors, that is persons who are going to make investment, as well as existing investors. So investors always looks at these fundamental ratios. Then up to now we have computed first part, liquidity ratios. Liquidity ratios, liquidity ratios provides information related to liquidity position of the company. These ratios are primarily intended for short-term lenders or creditors. They look at these ratios. So it provides information about liquidity. What liquidity? Short-term liquidity of the company. Useful for short-term creditors, short-term lenders or creditors. Whereas long-term solvency, capital structure ratios provides information with respect to long-term solvency, useful for long-term lenders like banks, NBFCs. A person who wants to buy long-term stake in the company, majority stake in the company, they are called as HNIs. HNIs means high net worth individuals always looks to make investment in companies. If they want to buy majority stake, then they look at the long-term solvency ratios. Similarly, if you want to fund a project with debt, then the banker has to look at the long-term solvency position of the company. In that case, they look at the long-term solvency ratios. So along with long-term solvency ratios, they also look at the coverage ratios. So coverage ratios, long-term solvency ratios put together defines your long-term credit worthiness. There are two questions. Can he pay? Will he pay? Can he pay means whether the party has capacity to honor the capacity to repay the debt. Your financial strength will be tested with long-term solvency positions. If these ratios are satisfactory or favorable, then you have long-term solvency. Yes, he can pay. He has the capability to pay. Then, the capability is not enough. He has to make payment on time. So, will he pay? Will he pay? That question can be answered with the help of coverage ratios. Coverage ratios tells you his repayment ability. Will he pay or not? So put together long-term solvency and coverage ratios. We are testing the long-term credit worthiness of the party. And fourth one, turnover ratios. So turnover ratios indicate the operating efficiency of the business. How well you are doing your business will be reflected in your turnover ratios. If they are satisfactory, you are running the business in a smooth manner. If they are not satisfactory, then it might affect your profitability as well as return on investment. And last one, to know the overall performance of the business, profitability ratios have been computed. So these turnover ratios and profitability ratios have to be seen by long-term lenders and financiers and shareholders of the company. Long-term investors, these are all called as long-term investors. Long-term investors requires information about these three areas. Then I'll quickly recap all the ratios discussed so far. First one, short-term solvency ratios. First one, current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities. Second one, liquidity ratio, quick ratio, acid test ratio. Current assets minus stock minus prepaid expenses divided by current liabilities. Current assets minus stock minus prepaid expenses by current liabilities. Some people will deduct the body, but in the institute material, they are not deducting overdraft because they are considering the short-term liability. Third one, working capital is the difference between current assets and current liabilities. Fourth one, absolute liquidity. Absolute liquidity is equal to cash plus bank plus marketable securities divided by current liabilities. So second one, long-term solvency ratios. So long-term solvency ratios are used to determine the long-term solvency position of the company. So they includes first equity ratio, that equal to equity divided by capital employed. Second one, debt ratio, total debt, short term as well as long term debt divided by total assets. Third one, debt equity ratio, debt by equity, we can call it as debt by equity or debt by debt plus equity. And fourth one, proprietary ratio, which is equal to proprietary funds or shareholders funds divided by total assets. And fifth one, capital gearing ratio. So capital gearing ratio is equal to fixed obligation funds divided by equity. It is similar to debt equity ratio. The only difference is while you calculating debt equity ratio, only long term debt is taken. While you calculating the capital gearing ratio, long term debt and preference share capital is taken. So both preference and long term debt are considered as external sources. Third category, coverage ratios. That includes coverage ratios includes interest coverage ratio, that is equal to EBIT by interest, preference dividend coverage ratio, that equal to profit after tax divided by preference dividend, equity coverage ratio is equal to earnings available to equity shareholders divided by equity. Fourth one, debt service coverage ratio, earnings available for debt service divided by interest plus principal. Where earnings available for debt service equal to, you know that, profit after tax plus non-cash expenses plus interest on long-term debt plus non-operating expenses minus non-operating incomes. But in the institute material, non-operating incomes are not deducted. This is because debt service coverage ratio tells you your repayment capacity or your commitment towards payment of interest and principal on the debt. So while you paying interest and principal, you must have enough cash in hand. So nobody will look at the source of cash. Suppose I want to pay the bank EMI. I may pay it with my own money or with my friend credit card or from any other source. The source of money is not important. You can meet the commitment, whether you have the capacity to meet the commitment or not is the criteria. That's why institute material non-operating incomes are not deducted. That's why we left that point. Next to go, turnover ratios. So first one, inventory turnover ratio, stock turnover ratio, sales. First use COGS to stock, average stock. See, stock has to be valued at cost or replacement value or realizable value, whichever is going. When you value in the cost, when you valuing the stock at cost, the numerator must be expressed in cost. That's why COGS to sales will be taken. So if you don't have COGS, then take sales in the place of COGS. That's why the formula is written as follows. COGS, if not available, sales by average stock. Second case, stock velocity. Stock velocity is equal to 365 12 months, 52 weeks divided by inventory turnover ratio. Third one, debtors turnover ratio is equal to credit sales by average debtors. Fourth one, debtors collection period or debtors velocity is equal to 365, 12 months or 52 weeks divided by DTR. Fifth one, creditors turnover ratio is equal to credit purchases divided by average creditors. Here average debtors. Sixth one, creditors velocity or average payment period is equal to 365 days, 12 months or 52 weeks divided by creditors turnover ratio. Seventh one, assets turnover ratio is equal to sales by total assets. Fixed assets turnover ratio is equal to sales or cost of sales by total assets. If you don't have sales information, then take cost of sales. Working capital turnover ratio is equal to working cap cost of sales or sales by working capital. So these are the ratios which are discussed so far. Next, profitability ratios, last part. So based on sales, first one, gross profit ratio. Gross profit by sales into 100. Net profit ratio. Profit after tax divided by sales into 100. Operating profit ratio. EBIT by sales into 100. Return on capital employed, EBIT by capital employed. Return on net worth is equal to PAT by net worth. So return on equity is equal to earnings available to equity shareholders divided by equity. So first we have to get the financial information. From that we have to compute financial ratios under 5 headings: short-term solvency, long-term solvency, coverage ratios, turnover ratios or equity ratios, finally profitability ratios. After analyzing the data and after computing the financial ratios, we have to compare these ratios either with the previous year data or with the best firm in the industry. After comparison, you came to know that whether the company has strength in its operations or is there are any weaknesses. If you find any weakness in any area, then you have to bring that point or bring that point to the concerned management, the areas where it has to improve its performance, and you will suggest the remedial measures to overcome those areas. This is how the ratio analysis not only highlights the strengths and weaknesses, it also resolves the problems which are identified while analyzing the data. Now we are moving to problematic part. You have to read all these